During the 20th century, a large killer crocodile with a giant white back was claimed to have killed several villagers in the Bujang River in Malaysia. In 1992, after a fierce battle with the locals, the man-eater was finally slain, but the story did not end here. Just days after the crocodile's death, a larger one was seen, one that some say was 35 feet long. This is the story of the white-backed killer, Bujang Senang. After the dead body of the crocodile was laid out, a longtime expert of crocodiles, Johnson Zhang of Zhang's Crocodile Farm, was the one given the task to measure this monster. The measurement officially came out to be 19 feet 3 inches long, with his weight suspected to be more than 2,000 pounds. Zhang also believed the crocodile to be around 50 years old while looking at the body. Although Bujang Senang was not as huge as what initial estimates claimed, he was still a massive animal, and one of the longest crocodiles ever measured. Just like what was claimed for many years, the crocodile had a huge white back, but what exactly caused this color? While the exact reason was never looked into, it is very likely genetic. Several crocodilians are known to be albino or leucistic, with a piebald morph being possible too. This type of strange coloration has even been seen recently with the saltwater crocodile from Australia. However, colorations like this are extremely rare. Several pictures of the crocodile were taken with the group of villagers involved with the death of Bujang Senang. These pictures spread throughout several newspapers stating that a true killing machine was finally put down. After taking some time to examine this giant, the body of the crocodile was completely dismembered. The stomach of the crocodile was cut open, which had stones, horns, nets, unidentified bones and a ball of hair, ring-shaped objects, and other garbage inside it. No obvious human remains were found. Unfortunately, the body of this giant was completely discarded, and the only thing that remained of Bujang Senang was his skull. During the preservation of the skull, it was observed that it had a lot of insignificant scratches and cuts, but there are some holes in the skull of Bujang Senang if you observe it. The skull was given to Johnson Zhang and displayed in Zhang's Crocodile Farm with the gun and bullet that killed the man-eater on display with it. Although the pictures of this monster and its skull are all that's left to examine, no one would ever expect the scientific significance and controversies that would follow. Before I speak about the skull itself, let me explain some crocodilian morphology and scientific history. For a very long time, it was stated that a crocodile's head length, specifically the dorsal cranial length shown here, made up about 1/7 of a saltwater crocodile's body. However, as more larger individuals were examined over time, it was believed that this only worked for animals under 5 meters. Once they get past this length, the head makes up about 1/8 of the body, and past 5.5 meters, it's about 1/9. Of the 3 20-foot crocodiles we know of with a high degree of evidence to back their existence, they all had a ratio of around 1:9. While the skulls of these individuals were long, they are not the longest we know of. Several longer skulls have been recorded, and the longest previously known one is from Cambodia and currently in the Paris Museum of Natural History. This skull has a length of 76 centimeters, or just under 30 inches. However, given the fact skulls can shrink by about 4% over time, the skull could have had a true length closer to 79 centimeters. While we do not know much about this crocodile or its size, given the length of the skull and the 1:9 ratio associated with very large saltwater crocodiles, the estimated length of this individual is believed to be around 23 feet, give or take. It is this notion of larger crocodiles having a ratio of 1:9 that has led many to believe that many of these larger croc skulls belong to individuals of around 23 feet. So what does Bujang Senang have to do with all of this? Well, it all starts with this picture. In the corner is a list of measurements which states the largest saltwater crocodile skull in my opinion in the world, with a dorsal cranial length of 77.2 centimeters. If this was true, this would make it 1 centimeter longer than the Paris skull, making Bujang Senang the new record holder. To add more credibility to these measurements, the man in the photo, who also put his signature next to these measurements, is George Craig, a famous crocodile hunter who currently houses the largest crocodile in captivity, Cassius. George Craig's ability to measure crocodile skulls was even trusted in the well-regarded paper Who's Got the Biggest, which examines large crocodile skulls. The question was, however, why was this skull not included in this paper? In fact, why was this skull never mentioned in any legitimate publications? This is where I come into play, and if you want to learn more about the tedious verification process of this skull, you can watch my video about it, but here's the shorter version of it. After discovering the picture of Craig with the skull on an online forum, I asked one of the authors of Who's Got the Biggest, Rom Whitaker, if he knew of any information of this skull. while Whitaker was not too sure of its validity, he sent me measurements he received from an informant named Remy Jalouizek, who stated a farm manager of Zhang's crocodile farm, Dennis Yang, got a measurement of 78.74 centimeters. With another supposed measurement being longer than the Paris skull, it seemed evident that this was a record breaker, but I still wondered why Craig didn't report this skull to more people. With the help of John Brugan, I got in touch with Craig's grandson, Tootie Scott, who explained to me the circumstances of the measurement. When Craig measured the skull, it was still in its glass case, and Craig's hands had to reach under the case and do the measurements in a very awkward fashion. Due to this, Craig was not confident in his measurements, and did not send them to anyone to use for any studies or papers. With all the speculation and uncertainty I learned of during my time investigating the skull, I finally wanted things to be concrete. I emailed Zhang's crocodile farm to not only take detailed measurements of the skull, but to also videotape or photograph the measurements so that this could be verified. On March 13th, 2024, all this speculation had finally been put to an end. Zhang's crocodile farm released on their social media the measurements of their skull, with the dorsal crane length coming out to be 77 centimeters long. I sent the footage to Ron Whitaker, and he declared it a new record length for a saltwater crocodile skull. After over 30 years of the skull being displayed, it finally got the recognition it deserved. On March 19th, another video was released which gave the following updated measurements of the crocodile's max head width and mandible length. When I contacted the farm manager, Madame Tio, about the skull finally being verified after so long, she stated, "We decided to measure it because we got a few emails asking for its measurements, and I personally think it would be good content for our social media too. The people who are involved in measuring it are me, my boss, Mr. Johnson Jong, and a few others helped." With the skull verified, the head length to total body length ratio, if we take into account the dry skull measurement and the potential fresh skull length, ranges from 1 to 7.3 to 1 to 7.6. For a crocodile that's over 19 feet long, this ratio is very much different than one would expect. Remember, at this size, Bujang Senang should have a ratio closer to 1 to 9, but he doesn't. Not only that, the fact we know that the longest saltwater crocodile skull comes from an individual under 20 feet makes it more questionable if these large skulls really did come from truly monstrous animals. This is really important information to consider, and Bujang Senang's skull helps us realize that we can't always predict a crocodile's length based on the size of a skull. Either way, after years of speculation and wondering, the true size of Bujang Senang's skull was confirmed, and all speculation concerning this giant was put to an end. Or was it? On April 16, 2024, an article was posted which claimed that by examining the photos, Bujang Senang was missing a section of his tail. If this was indeed the case, his true total length would be longer than what was claimed, but by how much? The author of the post claimed only 13 single-crested scutes were present, and with an average count of 18 for salties, the author believed 20 to 25 centimeters was missing. When I showed the pictures to one scientist, he could not 100% tell if part of the tail was missing or not, but based on the photos that seemed to indicate a missing portion, he thought a foot or more was missing. However, these could be overestimates. After learning about these theories, I contacted Johnson Jong himself and asked if he remembered if part of the tail was missing, and if so, how much was gone. He told me that based on his memory, the tail tip seemed more rounded than sharp like what's normally seen in crocodilians. However, he only believed 3 to 4 inches of the tail was missing. Bottom line, it seems true that Bujang Senang was missing part of his tail at the time of his capture, but not enough to majorly bump his length. However, let's just say he was around 20 feet. That would still indicate a ratio much different from other 20-footers discussed. Bottom line, I think 19 feet 7 inches is the true length we should state for now, as this comes from the man who measured this beast. This would not be the first time the length of Bujang Senang would be disputed. When I contacted croc expert Brandon Sidlow, he told me that a source of his from Sarawak told him Bujang Senang was 5.7 meters long, and that he's heard from others that were there at the time that he was around 5.2 meters long. However, given the length of Bujang Senang's skull, at least the 5.2 meter length seems too small to be true. Also, speaking of Brandon Sidlow, let's talk about the attacks tied to Bujang Senang. Brandon Sidlow runs the Worldwide Crocodilian Attack Database, which focuses on tracking all attacks from every crocodilian species. When discussing Bujang Senang, he told me that he was more skeptical of the attacks tied to this crocodile. He definitely killed at least one person, the person who was killed before he was killed, but it remains unknown how many of the previous attacks he was responsible for, although all of them did indeed occur. It's difficult to say with any certainty. It's possible he was responsible for more, but we will never know. In my personal opinion, reading Ritchie's book, the following attacks are ones I believe were truly tied to Bujang Senang, other than Dayong, of course. This is because all witnesses confidently claim a large crocodile with a white back was responsible for the attacks. But here's something to consider. What if this crocodile wasn't really Bujang Senang? Although many accepted that this was the Bujang Senang that terrorized Sarawak for many years, some did not believe it. Apparently, the lack of human remains or apparel in its stomach made some believe that this crocodile wasn't a serial man-eater. One woman even claimed that the white back of this crocodile was painted on with dye. One anonymous letter concerning Bujang Senang after Dayong's death stated, "Bujang Senang cannot be killed by a bullet. Only God can determine his death." Some believe that this crocodile was too small to be the killer. In fact, many locals believed a bigger killer still lurked in the Batong Lupar River, a crocodile said to be bigger than anyone could ever expect. In 1982, the same year Bujang Senang had cemented himself as the man-eater of the Batong Lupar River, sightings of another large crocodile started. Between October 13th and November 9th of that year, a large black crocodile was sighted swimming along the river and thrashing about menacingly. Then, in April of 1984, many locals stated that the white-backed Bujang Senang was constantly seen almost daily together with another equally large crocodile. The size estimates of both these crocs was around 20 feet at the time, but a more shocking claim would come many years later. Shortly after Dayong's killer was put down, a local by the name Pandu Anaklai claimed to have seen a monstrous crocodile in 1989. I have seen a black crocodile which is at least 35 feet long along the Batong Lupar. It emerged the day after Bahrain was killed. Just a few days after Dayong's death, the same supposedly large black crocodile was seen swimming. Rumors then spread that this black crocodile was going to avenge the death of the whiteback killer and kill any and all locals associated with this croc's death. It appears that for some time, locals had a separate name for this large black crocodile, Buaya Ekor Kudong, which supposedly had a stumped tail, which is interesting considering that the supposed Bujang Senang that was killed had an incomplete tail. Along those lines, it was believed by some that this larger crocodile was the true Bujang Senang. Apparently, it was reported by some Ibans that Bujang Senang wore a red cape and its body was black, but its wife wore a white dress. So, could that white-backed man-eater be Bujang Senang's wife? The only problem with this thought is that it was confirmed that the white-backed crocodile killed in 1992 was a male. Given all the information about this second giant, I can't help but compare this information to Potol of the Philippines, a supposed 30-foot crocodile that was also said to be very dark in coloration. Just like the black crocodile, Potol was said to hang out with Lolong, the 20-footer caught in 2011. Not only that, it was said that Potol was the true man-eater and that they caught the wrong crocodile. So what can we get out of this? Well, I think it is strange that within the last 40 years there have been 2 occasions of a pair of large saltwater crocodiles hanging out together. While it is not uncommon for large salties to live in the same river system together, I find it strange that locals seem to say that they are intentionally staying close together. Also, I find it interesting both Potol and this black crocodile are said to be very dark in coloration. Perhaps if these 2 crocodiles are indeed freaks of nature and are gargantuan, we can expect other enormous crocs listed throughout history to look this way too. However, I think the big takeaway here is that even though a large crocodile was caught in both stories, locals stated a bigger crocodile was still out there. While this could be true, I think it's just locals for one reason or another refusing to believe that the respective crocodiles caught were the real man-eaters. However, I will say that I believe the story of Potol more in the sense of him being the true man-eater, as his story is more uniform in details, while this black crocodile's details vary more. The 30-foot claims also seem more exaggerated, and will need much more evidence if we are to consider them seriously. Bottom line, no matter how we look or examine the incidents that took place in Sarawak, a truly giant man-eater with a white back was killed. Bujang Senang is an example of a legend blending with reality, and that's why his legacy lives on to this day. There is so much fact and belief mixed into this story that it is hard to deny the strangeness of this crocodile. The story of Bujang Senang, while not as well known as Gustave or Lolong, is still one that will live forever. Beyond the skull being preserved, a large statue of the whiteback killer exists in Sarawak, and the crocodile was so popular that a rock group even made a song about the legendary beast. While his legacy is still one filled with mystery, Bujang Senang proves that monsters do exist, and that living with these ancient predators can be a struggle to the locals that live with them. Only time will tell if the myths tied to this crocodile become reality. To learn more about the animals you just saw, buy my book, What We Get Wrong About Crocodilians. It examines claims of giant crocodiles, a World War II massacre, their regenerating tails, alligators in sewers, their record land speeds, and more. The book looks at a variety of subjects many people, including experts, get wrong about these animals, and I desperately wanted to dispel the myths that have persisted so long. Buy What We Get Wrong About Crocodilians in physical or digital formats. Link in bio, comments, or description to buy. Hey everyone, I just wanted to say I'm really happy to have finished this series. I knew for a long time that the story of Bujang Senang would be one that would be really interesting to work on. I want to say a huge thank you to Madam Teo and Mr. Zhang for answering my questions concerning this crocodile and its skull. I would also like to say that most of the facts shown in this series are due to the information reported in Richie and Zhang's book. It is a really great read, not only about Bujang Senang, but about killer crocodiles in general. I would also like to say that although I only played a small role, I am still happy to have been involved in unraveling the mystery tied to Bujang Senang's skull. It'll be something I will never forget. I know I've taken a bit of a break from the channel. It's been about a month since I last uploaded, but I do plan on working on more videos soon. One of the things I'm really looking forward to is interviewing Bram Whitaker, who, if you don't know, was also involved with measuring the longest crocodile we know of. This last month has been really busy for me, but I'm glad I can start working on more videos again. Don't forget to subscribe for more croc content, and thank you all for the support.